Hello and welcome back to Wheels of Mercury. I'm your host Wheels, and today we're talking about bands that I only like one album from. I had trouble choosing an exact title for this video, but I settled on the title One and Done. But I still don't think it's the perfect title, but it's the title I'm going to go with. So this list is going to be in alphabetical order, and the bands that are on this list have more than 3 albums, so they have to be very established bands. So before I get into my list, leave a comment down below. What bands in rock and metal do you like only one album from and that's it? First off is the British death metal project Abyssal with their debut album Denouement. Now, after this album, Abyssal would become sort of this British answer to bands like Portal and Ulcerate. I like this album the most out of all of them. It's the only album I come back to because it still sounds like a Blackened death metal album to me, with little bits and nuggets of dissonance, but not too much where it becomes overpowering, if you get what I mean. I would still recommend this for fans of dissonant death metal like Ulcerate, but also for fans of like early Tomb Mold, Morbid Angel, even a little bit of Imperial Triumphant in the vocals, being as low and guttural as they are. If you like those sorts of death metal bands, don't be afraid to check out Denouement by Abyssal. Next up will be a surprise to some of you. Some of you who may know me as a metalcore defender. You'll be surprised to learn that I only like one full album from August Burns Red, and that album is Rescue and Restore. I really like the genre experimentation on this album, from salsa to, and there's even a xylophone on one song. They get creative with expanding the boundaries of their metalcore sound. And Jake Lewis sometimes goes out of his range of just doing inhale screams and actually says some yells that are actually legible, for lack of a better word. I like that. I like the positive nature of a lot of these songs and the affirmations of a lot of these lyrics, and yeah, it's a good pick-me-up. And the only thing that doesn't work for me is the spoken word part in the song Spirit Breaker. I get what they were going for, but it just sounds corny and a little bit out of place. It sounds like the hopecore thing that bands were going for around 2011, 2012, 2013. Bands like Memphis Mayfire and the like were doing. But still, this is a great August Burns Red album, and it would not be a bad place to start if you've never listened to August Burns Red. Next up is the post-hardcore band Before Their Eyes with their self-titled 2007 album. This album was produced by Joey Sturgis, famous for doing Asking Alexandria, The Devil Wears Prada, and MU. Before Their Eyes have a style on this record that is similar to the whole Southern hardcore movement that existed around 2005 to 2007. Bands like Maylene and the Sons of Disaster and stuff like that. They got like Thousand Fried riffs, like sort of bluesy style licks and stuff like that. And they even have a cowbell on one song. But my favorite song on the entire record is in the very beginning of the album, City in a Snow Globe. That final 45 minutes of City in a Snow Globe is so hyped. It gets me going, man. It's awesome. So, if you like post-hardcore and emo, A Boy Blush Red by Underoath, or albums like that, don't be afraid to check out Before Their Eyes' debut studio record. Next up will be another surprise to you all, Daughtry with Dearly Beloved, released in 2021. I gotta say this about Chris Daughtry. I've never been a fan of his stuff prior to this album. I always felt it sounded kinda sappy and melodramatic and made for radio top 40 play back in the day, especially after he won American Idol back in like 2004 and 05, somewhere around the lines of that. With this album, he actually took a tiny bit of a left turn into embracing heavier rock styles, and it works for him. His soaring voice really flies off the handle in a good way in songs like Heavy as the Crown and Changes Are Coming, and he really brings his A game vocally. And the riffs are actually heavy, they actually have muscle, unlike his previous stuff, which is all like pop rock fluff that I was never personally into. I'm waiting to see how he will follow this up. But for now, this album is the only Daughtry album that I like. Next up is Electric Wizard with the stoner metal classic Dopethrone. Now this is a dark record full of references to occult B-movies and drugs and, you know, it's like Sabbath turned up to 11, basically. The fuzz is just so all-encompassing, so freaking heavy, and Joss Orborn could be a dead ringer for Lemmy Kilmister with his vocal technique. The bass tone is awesome, and the start of the song Funeralopolis with the ding, bam, 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 lives rent free in my head, man. It is so good, and the apocalyptic lyricism, and a complete package, man. If you want to get into stoner metal, and you need only one album to get into, this is it. Check it out. Next up is the North Dakotan black metal band Ghostbath with their album Loather. Now, I have a funny story about this band. I saw them live back in 2016 at the Garrison in Toronto, and they were bad. Really bad. Flash forward to 2021. Lo and behold, I check out the singles for this album, and to my surprise, Dennis McCullough, the lead singer, is actually screaming words. And he's actually using a different vocal technique that doesn't screw up his throat. And I was like, yes! Finally, Ghostbath is improving their sound. It's not a perfect album by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a step in the right direction for Ghostbath. And honestly, they can only go up from here. If you like stuff like, I don't know, Psychonaut 4 or Nocturnal Depression or None, and they even have a metalcore / deathcore thing in a song with the former Zaya is Murder vocalist. I would also recommend it to fans of a band called Abigail Williams, because they are a black metal band that used to experiment with metalcore as well. Yeah, if you like all of those types of bands, don't be afraid to check out Ghostbath's newest album, the only album I like from them. Next up is Haken with their masterpiece, The Mountain, released in 2013. Holy moly, this album is beautiful. It's the love child of Dream Theater, Gentle Giant, and like Steven Wilson. It is just amazing. The melodies are so hypnotic, they are so beautiful, and the jazzy voice of the singer, I think his name is Ross Jennings. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I got it right. Anyway, his voice is jazzy and fits the music perfectly, and Cockroach King is Gentle Giant inspired. And those harmonies, how they glide over each other and just connect and then like glide over and then connect again. They're just beautiful lyric, beautiful instrumentation. If you have never checked out Haken, this would not be a bad album to start with. Next up is Insomnium with Above the Weeping World. I love Insomnium, but this is the only album I truly love front to back from them. Above the Weeping World has some of the most melancholic and beautiful guitar lines I've ever heard. The Killjoy is one of my favorite melodic death metal leads of all time. If you like albums like Bellacore's Zone's Reach, check this out. It's awesome. Next up is the legendary debut from Korn, released 30 years ago, in fact. What can I say about this debut Korn album that hasn't already been said? This album launched a freaking movement, nu metal, and I think this is still one of the best nu metal albums ever. I'm going to sound like an old fuddy-duddy grandpa here, but I don't think metal bands make albums like this anymore. It's rare that they make albums like this anymore. This Korn album is just so raw and it was done like as a full band. It was recorded as a full band. So in between songs, like at the beginning of the song Clown, you hear like actual snippets of dialogue between the band members, just like goofing around and talking about stuff, and one of them got angry at, I think, Jonathan Davis. Anyways, it's just raw and heartfelt and open book and dark, and it goes through a lot of trauma that Jonathan Davis has gone through in his life, and it is just one of the rawest, darkest, but most captivating metal albums of the 90s. And I forgot to mention that David Silvera's drumming is awesome. I wish they never parted ways the way they did, because in my mind, David Silvera was Korn's best drummer. He fit the funky sort of hip-hop inspired heavy sound really well, more so than Ray Luzier. If you ever want to hear how nu metal got its start, this thing right here. Next up, Megadeth with Rust in Peace. Another classic that I will not spend too much time on because so much ink and so many videos have been made about this very album. I could literally say Marty Friedman and then just move on, because he is the all-star of this album, the MVP of this album, I should say. Him and Dave trading off leads is just immaculate, and the drumming from Nick Menza, rest in peace to him, is just spot on, and even Dave Ellison's performance is just amazing. The band were firing on all cylinders here, and it's just so good. The only issue that some people have with Megadeth is Dave's voice like this, but you know, that voice is Megadeth. I cannot imagine Megadeth without that voice. If you can get over that voice that Dave Mustaine has, it's a classic for a reason. Next up is Tesseract with Altered State, released in 2013. Their only album with vocalist Ash O'Hara before Dan Tompkins came back into the band. And Ash O'Hara did a good job on this record. He might not be Dan Tompkins, but Nocturne off of this album is still a live staple to this day. And the many movements they go through, it's just beautiful and heavy and kind of intense, but not in a way that, say, grindcore or death metal is intense. It's more intense in a beautiful way. And I gotta say it, I like that there's no screams on this album. I don't like the new Tesseract because they brought back the screaming vocals. To be honest, that's not what I come to Tesseract for. I come to Tesseract for the ambient soundscape and stuff like that. And this album right here delivers it in spades. Beautiful album cover, by the way. This wouldn't be a bad place to start on Tesseract either, despite Dan Tompkins not being on the album per se. But you know, it's a great record. Next up is the Austrian metalcore band The Sorrow with Blessings from a Blackened Sky, their debut 2007 album. This band was a product of its time. It's full-on darkest hour, bullet for my Valentine, As I Lay Dying worship. But you know what? I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with the production being muddy, and the guitar lines being kind of muddy too. I like it. It's got a charm to it. It's got a raw charm and energy to it. And you can tell they put their heart into it as well, despite English not being their first language. The only thing in hindsight that I found out later about it that kind of diminished the aura for me a little tiny bit is it was released on Draka Productions. If you know any of the other bands that label has signed over the years, yikes. However, that doesn't mean that this isn't a good record. And that doesn't mean that I still have fun listening to it, because that won't dim my enjoyment of it. If you like 2000s era metalcore, like, you know, Poison the Well or Darkest Hour and stuff like that, don't be afraid to check this out. Next up is Static X with Wisconsin Death Trip from 1999. Well, I've talked about this album before on my channel when we were all in quarantine, and I did a quarantine video in 2020. This album has a lot of groove, a lot of catchiness, and a lot of fun to be had. And the industrial samples and grooves and just the textures on all of this album, it's just immaculate. And Wayne Static has a voice that if you hear it once, you're never gonna get it out of your head. And you know, it's an iconic nu metal record. It deserves its status as a classic nu metal debut. If you like Cold Chamber and stuff like that, this is a great record. Last but not least is the deathcore band Veil of Maya with their album Eclipse, released in 2012. Now this was Veil of Maya's last album, with Brandon Butler as the vocalist. I've never liked their stuff with Lucas Magyar. I've always thought that stuff sounds way too much like Periphery. But before then, they had Brandon Butler. Because Brandon Butler did only harsh vocals, I thought they stood out from the pack. And this album is only 27 minutes, which I really appreciate. It gets in, it gets out. No fat, no filler, all killer. In 2012, when I saw Veil of Maya at Heavy T.O. in Downsview Park in Toronto, I think they were playing one of these songs and they split the crowd, and that's where I saw my first Wall of Death. So I have to thank Veil of Maya for introducing me to the concept of the Wall of Death. So that's where I am going to end it. Thank you for watching Wheels of Mercury. Don't forget to hit the like button to subscribe and hit the bell as well for notifications. Rock on, guys, and I will see you in the next video.